among our friends, someone has HIV.
When I was 11 months old, my father stole HIV-tainted blood from his workplace as a phlebotomist, came over to the hospital that I was staying at for an asthma attack, got my mother out of the room, and intentionally injected me with the HIV virus. Not only was it HIV-tainted blood, it was also incompatible blood.
I am a 30-year survivor. I contracted the virus as a baby when I was 3 months old, having open heart surgery.
We lost my brother in 1987, and he lost his wife in 1993.
My name is Justin Bell. I am HIV positive, and I live with AIDS.
And I had 15 cut blood transfusions, and I was in the hospital for 3 months after the surgery. And for years after, 15 years after, I was always the shortest kid in class.
I was much older. I knew my father did something that was wrong, but we really didn't talk about it. I think my mom was trying to protect me from the whole truth. So it wasn't until I was a little bit older where the dots were finally connected for me that, you know, I'm sick, I have HIV, and here's what my dad did.
My transmission was the post-procedure that was done in 2001. It was faulty directions, sanitary instructions for the equipment that was used that caused the transmission of HIV.
You know, my brother had a transfusion in 1982, and was married in 1986, and died in 87. It was 5 years before he knew he was infected.
I had a pacemaker too, so I was constantly seeing doctors. Saw them every year, 4 or 5, almost 10 times a year. So when I turned 15, I had to have a pacemaker replaced. It was the third one. And they replaced the pacemaker, and I came out with a really bad cough, and I couldn't get cleared to go back to school. And I went to a pulmonologist here, and the first thing he said to me was, "Why are you so short?" I walked into his office at 15 years old. I was 50 pounds and 4 foot tall. And I said, "I have a bad heart." He looked right at me and said, "Your heart has nothing to do with how tall you get." He ended up sending me to Gainesville, Florida to endocrinology, which was the head of the endocrinology department. So one of our students noticed in my medical records I had never had an HIV test. And I submitted to one, and 2 weeks later, got the news. That's what it was. All those 16 plus years of wondering were finally answered. It was rough, and they told me to come back in 2 weeks, and 2 weeks I started treatment, and my treatment was 22 pills a day.
AZT came out in that fall. I mean, there was nothing, just pain meds, and he went from a 210-pound, 6'4" strong male merchant marine to 95-pound, just nothing.
I actually thought that.
Seventh grade year, being 13 years old, was really hard because my mother was in a car accident. A guy ran over like 80 miles an hour, slammed into a driver's side door, broke 3 of her vertebrae, punctured liver, punctured lung. I watched her go flatline in the hospital. So in that moment, I was just so angry that I just wanted to end my life. I was called to my Bible and I read this passage, "Why so downcast, O my soul, put your hope in God." And the word hope stuck out to me. And at that moment, that's when the huge epiphany came, like, the way I was living isn't an okay way to live. That even if I'm not accepted, God accepts you. And that there's a plan and a purpose for you. And there's a plan and a purpose for everyone. And that's why we're all uniquely made.
People just need to know that it's not a gay disease, a drug user disease, a blood transfusion caused a disease. It's a disease.
But, you know, fast forward to middle school, the kids started taunting me and calling me names like AIDS boy, gay boy, freak. To going from verbal abuse to physical abuse, and I was getting jumped weekly in the locker room.
Him that she passed, that was one of the hardest things I ever had to do. And then another boy passed, and then another boy passed, and you know, I just sat with him at the hospital all night because he didn't have anybody, and even the nurses back in 1998 or 9 were afraid to be with the people. They want to put the food under the door. They're just people, you know, that are sick.
So my mother fought for that right for me to go to school. And even when they allowed me to go to school, they said he can't drink from the water fountains. He has to bring his own water bottle. He can only come for half a day and use a restroom that's just for him.
I've gone to the mayor's office. I've dealt with congressmen. And soon coming up, I'm going to be dealing with Treatment Action Group out of New York. They're coming to Georgia. They did the plan to end AIDS in New York. They got a grant to take that nationwide, and their first state they're coming to is Georgia. And so I'm going to be working very closely with them to write a blueprint for Georgia.
When he passed, she was very involved in a lot of things. They were in Washington, D.C. She formed the first heterosexual group with AIDS, you know, support group for AIDS. And she died 6 years later, but she gave it all she got, all she had.
Life can be a cool teacher because it gives you the test face and the lessons later.
We are a village. You are in my village. You have already provided me for something by welcoming both Derek and I into this classroom.
And that's the only way I think you're ever going to get these numbers down, is to keep that conversation every single day.
Members of the village, let's reach out to the classmate beside us and say, let's go test. Everyone is affected. We just have the responsibility to make sure that we do not become infected.
My passion in life is people. So I always love helping people, and I think I do a lot of that through motivational speaking.
And then I've worked at hospice for a couple of years, you know, so I just like to be with somebody that doesn't have anybody.
HIV doesn't have boundaries. Doesn't have boundaries.